people tend to think that sabbaticals mean that you're going to leave your job or do these big life pivots after it. And actually, sometimes it's the smallest things that can make such a big difference. So I don't want people to think that just because you take a sabbatical means you have to come back and do something radically different when you return. Sometimes it's really just your relationship and your mindset around what you're doing that has to shift, and that can make a huge difference too.
You don't have to wait until you reach financial independence to start enjoying your life. You can do that much earlier and start living a life that you love and that's true to you. Welcome to Freedom Before Fire. Using fire and life design techniques, we help you create freedom on your way to fire instead of waiting until you're retired to do the things that light you up. I'm your host Greg, a fire movement and life design enthusiast. If you're itching to get freedom now, then let's do this. Hello, my friend, and welcome back. So I've got an awesome guest today to talk about one of my favorite topics, which is sabbaticals. So our guest today is Lyndall Farley. So Lyndall is a sabbatical coach and consultant. Through her coaching program, she guides people to intentionally design a break that helps them recharge and reimagine their next chapter in life. Lyndall also works with companies setting up sabbatical programs to boost employee well-being and retention. Since the beginning of her career, she's been using sabbaticals to reflect so that she could return and leap forward with her next big challenge. So Lyndall spent 10 plus years working for a global firm specializing in organizational change management before training as a coach and launching her own business. And then this year, she was awarded a master's in psychology and neuroscience from King's College London and combines all this knowledge and experience into her coaching approach. So some of the things that you'll learn today include how she was able to take 11 sabbaticals, how she defines sabbaticals, how you can plan for one, typical reasons clients come to her for coaching, the 4 types of sabbatical takers, how to fund one at different stages of your career, advice for people returning from a sabbatical, and then what she really does as a sabbatical coach. All right, so let's dive into this awesome interview. Okay, welcome to the show, Lyndall. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm really happy to have you on the show today. Can you tell us whereabouts in the world are you?
Yeah, it's an absolute pleasure to be with you. I am currently in Amsterdam, but I hope that you can hear from my accent that I'm actually Australian. So I live in Amsterdam, but I'm Australian.
Nice. Yeah, so last time I've been to, trying to think, Amsterdam, I was there. I think I was in high school when I was in Amsterdam before, and also in university. So that was quite a long time ago. How would you describe it? What's it like for anyone that's never been there? Just kind of curious. What's it?
Oh, I feel like Amsterdam has the heart of a big city, but it's in the size of a village. And that's what I love about it. So everything is super close. We ride our bikes everywhere. We don't even own a car. And but we still have access to all of the culture and the music and the events and the restaurants that you would sort of see or expect in a big city. So it's kind of, it's great. The one thing that I hate about Amsterdam, though, is the weather. It's grey and rainy and dark a lot of the time.
Yeah, it reminds me of London.
Yeah,
like
it's
London.
actually, so if your audience have ever been to London, basically it's the same kind of weather as London. And as an Australian who grew up on the beach, that is something that I struggle with on a daily basis, but I still love Amsterdam.
Good stuff. Now I know we just started chatting away there, but could you give us a quick 60-second intro about what you're up to and what you're doing at the moment?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am Lyndall Farley. I am a sabbatical coach. And so what is a sabbatical coach exactly? Basically, I help people take and make the most of an extended break from work to really use it as a transformative moment of change in their life. And so what that looks like is me supporting people as they take a break. or plan the break, but most importantly, helping them redesign their life while they're on a break and then transition to the ideal version of their life when they return. I started doing this 6 years ago, and that was as a result of the fact that I've actually taken 11 sabbaticals myself, which sounds like a crazy, crazy number, I know. But the truth is, I was taking sabbaticals before I even had the word sabbatical to describe what it was that I was doing. And so for me, sabbaticals has always been more like a way of life. I've always been really goal orientated, and I would work really, really hard, achieve something, and then need to kind of step back and reset and refocus for whatever was next. And so, that's why I've ended up taking 11 sabbaticals. And I, fundamentally attribute all of these wonderful breaks to the life that I have now.
That's amazing. And those 11 sabbaticals, just really quickly on those 11 sabbaticals, because that's quite unique. Could you tell us, like, how long were they, like, roughly on some of them? What was the purpose of them? Did they just happen naturally? Were they planned?
Yeah, so yes to all of those. So every single sabbatical has happened in a completely different way and has had a different shape and form and purpose. I started them when, my first sabbatical was, I'd started my corporate career, actually started in public relations after doing my first qualification, and then discovered that I hated public relations, and basically just was like, oh my goodness, what am I going to do with my life? So I sort of took what some people describe as a gap year, and that was kind of my first sabbatical. And so that was really figuring out, okay, what am I going to do now? My first kind of try in the corporate world has ended in disaster. So I had to regroup. And I call that my ski bunny year. So I went around the world working in ski resorts.
Amazing.
And it was fantastic. It was so much fun. And then I retrained and started my career in management consulting and business strategy. And I took a number of sabbaticals, one to volunteer with an organization that was working with Aboriginal communities in the far north regions of Australia, another one to travel around Southeast Asia. A lot of my sabbaticals have centered around travel, just because that's my passion. And then, the interesting thing is sort of how they've progressed. So in my 20s and early 30s, my sabbaticals were very much just opportunistic. They were just like, I want to travel. I need a break. I feel lost right now. I'm just going to go out into the world and, figure it out as I go along, right? And then as I have, got more sabbaticals under my belt and got older, I've gotten much more intentional with them. And so I really intentionally plan them and have much more focus on the purpose and what I actually need from that time, so that I can make sure that I actually get what it is that I need, and I don't return just to exactly the same situation that I left.
Yeah, exactly. I've got an interesting sort of thought here. Obviously, you've taken these 11 sabbaticals, and as you said, it's given you like turns in life and interesting changes. Can you imagine if you didn't take those 11 sabbaticals? Like, where do you think you would be right now if you didn't take those 11 sabbaticals? So someone's got an idea of like, what would the opposite be?
I would be living in my life hell. I would be married to a boring man in the suburbs of Sydney with a couple of kids that were probably by now fully grown. I'd be in a boring job that I was stuck in because I had a mortgage that was tying me down, and I'd be probably drinking too much and lamenting all of the things that I didn't do in my life.
Yeah, I think you painted a clear picture.
I mean, you're laughing, but I say that to myself and I'm like, blimey, that is scary. So I think...
Oh my gosh. No, that really paints the picture there of, the positive changes of the
Yeah,
things that
and
you've
I
gone
think,
through.
I think that sabbaticals for me, or taking the time out, right? It doesn't matter if you want to call it a gap year, a sabbatical, a career break, whatever you want to call it. Those times away have been absolutely critical in me being able to go out and live a big life, go and live my dreams and really experience all that life has to offer. And I think that is one of the core things that I've always known, is that I wanted to live a big life. I wanted to experience all of the life phases and stages in all of the richness that they can offer,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't have any regrets in that. I really have
Amazing.
lived a big life, and I love that, and I'm proud of myself for doing that, because it's not been easy. It's always been scary to step away, and people have, judged me. They thought I was crazy stepping in my early career, particularly stepping away from these supposedly, big successful corporate jobs, to go off and, be a ski bunny or travel the world. And I think, I'm just glad that I've done all of those things, because I look back now, having traveled to 65 countries around the world, and all 7 continents, and all of the different people I've met, all of the different experiences I've had, all of the different ups and downs, the roller coasters. I've welcomed all of that into my life, and it feels like so far I've lived a really rich, big life, and I love that.
Amazing. And there's still like loads more on your journey, and unknown things that will happen as well. So
much. Yeah. I mean, the life stage that I'm in now is like motherhood, right? So I've got a 3-year-old daughter. And so, that's kind of the life stage that I'm in now. And so I'm trying to, as much as I possibly can, lean into all of the richness of what that life stage has to offer, So it now, for me, it's not about, traveling to all of the countries in the world, because I feel like, to be honest, I feel like I've really done that. It's about, we do slow, whenever we take a sabbatical, because we regularly take them, it's about slow travel, and it's about, being in one place for a really long time and seeing my daughter flourish and learn and, be a citizen of the world.
Yeah, exactly. You said it really nicely there. And I really sympathize and empathize with a lot of the things you said about, like, with sabbaticals, and they're really amazing. But at the same time, they can be quite hard. And there's like fear factors about this and what people says and things like that. On my side, I've taken, 2 sort of official ones, but 3 in total. I took like 3 months off after university, went to America, North America to travel. And then 5 years ago, I took like a year off, and then I'm currently on a lot, sort of like a 13, 14 month one at the moment, and still going. So I know what all the things that you mentioned, because it's like everyone looks at you like, what are you doing? Even my parents are like, what? Are you going to quit work? And then just, what are you going to do? So, and they're sort of the baby boomer sort of generation. And anyway, I digress. Just, you do get some interesting comments, and
I think
from other people.
It's definitely one of the big things that hold people back. It's actually, there's a term for it: FOPO, fear of other people's opinions, and it is a real thing, though, right? Because when you're almost wavering in a decision yourself, and then you listen to somebody who you have respect for, a colleague, a boss, a parent, and they are critical, or they share their own fears with you, it can really make you waver on whether this is the right decision, right? And I'm not going to say in every case a sabbatical is the right thing to do. Sometimes it's not the right timing, right? But I think that people really need to think about the bigger picture, and what is the purpose of that break, and what is it going to allow them to do. I think the most important thing that somebody can ask themselves when they're thinking of taking a break is, what do I want from this time? But then, what is the cost of not taking this break? And that is really the answer that solidifies it a lot of the time for the people that I'm working with. And the answer most often is quite scary, which is, if I don't take this break, I am just going to continue on this hamster wheel. And this hamster wheel basically leads to unhappiness and burnout. So if I don't take this break right now, I painted the picture of the life that I would have ended up in. And so, people end up with similar kinds of trajectories, and that can be quite scary. So.
Yeah, and I like that thought process that you use, that kind of mental model, because on our sort of second sabbatical, the one that we're on now, me and my wife actually had those kind of similar questions. We're like, if we didn't actually do this, because we were really umming and ahhing about it for a while, like, should we do it? And then then we thought, okay, what would happen if we didn't do it? And then the list was like, oh wow, kind of eye-opening. Yeah. So yeah, no, I love that one. I wanted to kind of get to the basics. So if someone's listening to this and they're kind of like, oh, that sounds cool, but if we were to like strip it down to its basics, how would you like kind of define a sabbatical, just to try to bring it back? And I just got different names. I think in the FI community we like to call it mini retirements, and I know there's like career breaks. And so can you just give us like a really quick understanding or definition of define it and maybe its benefits?
Yeah, absolutely. So a sabbatical is simply just an extended break from work, so it's longer than a vacation, and it's about the purpose of the break. So it's an intentional extended break from work to pursue other interests, right? And so this is what sets it apart from a break that might have been because of, having a child, or because you have to care for an elderly person, or taking a break because you've got your own health crisis, right? So it's about intentionality and your ability to pursue your own self-directed interests. And from a duration perspective, sabbaticals are generally measured in months, and career breaks do tend to be a little bit measured. They can be measured a little bit longer, so more like in years. But the terms are used very flexibly. And, a mini retirement is really, that term is really harking back to, the FI movement, right? Where you're trying to use the concept of using some of your retirement money earlier and sort of speckling it through your career. And so at the end of the day, I think another sort of anchor for the term sabbatical also is its relationship to how companies use them. So sabbaticals can also be supported by a company. So a company might give you the ability to take an extended break from work and then return to your job. And that, in most cases, that is unpaid, but in some cases, and increasingly so, that can be a paid break from work or a part paid break from work. But the ability to know that you've got a job to return to can be a significant perk that reduces the anxiety around, taking the time. And so that's one thing that is present with sabbaticals that's not necessarily present with career breaks. And but having said that, there's lots of people that resign from their job, they leave their company, and they go on sabbatical for 3, 6, 9 months, and then they look for a job after that. So these terms are used very flexibly, and to be honest, I don't care. I don't care what word they want to use. I want them to use the word that resonates most for them, but gets them on to the break, right? Just take a break. That's all I care about.
Yeah, good one. And I'm just curious then, from your perspective, and you're like looking at your clientele, what are the typical reasons they come to you, and their reasons for having one, and like demographics, like where they come from around the world? I'm just curious about, where they're based and what do they come to you for typically?
Yeah. Okay. So I have a 2x2 matrix. And so there's basically 4 key reasons that somebody wants to take a sabbatical, and has 4 key different purposes for that time, right? And it's really based on, what is their level of career satisfaction? So how are they going with work? And what's their current sort of state of well-being, right? And I can share this visual matrix with your audience in the show notes. And basically, if you're, you're not really happy with your career and your energy levels and your well-being is really low, then you're kind of headed towards burnout, right? And so that's the first key reason that somebody wants to take a break, is that they're just in a bad space in life and work. And if they don't take a break, they're going to, bad things are going to happen, right? And so I call these people rebooters. They need to take the break to completely reboot their work and their life, right? So they're the rebooters. Nice. Then there's the people that are really low on energy, right? But fundamentally, they're okay with their career. They like the work that they're doing. They might want to make a few changes to the way that they're working, like work-life balance or whatever, but they're not fundamentally looking for a career shift. They just feel like they've lost the passion for it, or they just don't have any energy, right? So these people are rechargers. So the purpose of the sabbatical is to really focus on just recharging their energy and getting their passion back again, right? Then you've got the people who are completely done with work. They're just completely over their career. They hate their career, but everything else in their life is actually going okay. They've got enough, their well-being's all right, their energy levels are okay. And so I call these people the refocusers. And these people are using the sabbatical to really define the career pivot for themselves, right? To really define, okay, what's next in my career? And using the time to maybe start little experiments towards that, or start learning or training or whatever it might be, right? Or building a business, right? So they're refocusers. And then the final category is what I call reacher dreamers. And they're perfectly fine with energy and well-being, and they're perfectly fine with their career, but they've just got big life dreams. Their bucket list is really long, and they need a lot of time off work to go and achieve those bucket list dreams. So these are the climbing Everest people, right? And so although they just need time off, because you can't climb Everest in a week's vacation, right? You need more time to go and climb Everest. And so they want to take a break to go and achieve these really big life dreams. And so, yeah, they're the 4 different types of people that take a break.
Nice. Is it usually just like, okay, I'm going on this sabbatical, I have to I'm in like one of these 4 categories, or during a sabbatical, can someone kind of like move from one to another, or mix and match?
Oh,
or
Greg, really? You're in advanced mode here, Greg. Well
sorry,
done.
Have I gone?
No, that's great. No, that's really insightful, and that is absolutely true. Yes. So somebody can maybe start in reboot, but then they move towards refocus, right? Because they get some energy back, and then they really put that energy into refocusing their career, right? Or somebody starts in reboot, but they've also got big life dreams and they want to go climb Everest too. And so they end up, in reach a dream as well. So you've definitely got people moving around the matrix, and you've got people that sort of sit on the edge between 2 different kinds of, or 2 or 3 different, right? So a lot of the time people will resonate with sort of 1 or 2 of those different kind of things. And, it's just a framework. It's not a golden rule, right? So I think it's more just a starting point for somebody to really think about, where am I at in life, but also what do I need from this break? And the reason that that's important is because if I actually have a rebooter, right, so somebody who is heading towards burnout or who is already in burnout, and then they come to me and say, okay, I'm week 1, I'm going to go and climb Everest. Then I'm like, red flag, okay, you're literally burning out right now. You cannot go and climb Everest. Let's schedule into your break some decompression time. Let's get your health and well-being back on track. Let's get you psychologically healthy enough to go and climb Everest, then go climb Everest, right? And so it's really matching the plan to the purpose and the needs of the break as well.
Yeah, nicely put. So if someone's listening, and just so we could give them some sort of tactical, some concrete examples, can you, obviously without mentioning any names, can you give some 2 or 3 examples of like some clients, like their profile and like what were they doing general work wise, and then what their plans were, what they'd done during a sabbatical? Can you give some ideas of what their journey was, and just give some concrete examples?
Yeah, so I mean, I keep all of my client relationships very confidential, but I'll give you the sort of general flavor, right? So this year, I've actually been working with a lot of startup founders and people who have been working in the tech space, and they've sort of exited a startup, or they have, been like essentially working really, really hard towards in the tech world, in the startup world, and then they've come to a point where they have the opportunity to exit, right? And so, there's a lot of money associated with their exit in a lot of cases, but they are taking the break to really figure out what's next. Like, so they're real refocuses, right? And I think at the same time, what 2 or 3 of them have been doing is really using the time to redefine their relationship with work, because they are recognizing that they have been working in a really unhealthy way. And so, because they've been sort of caught up in that startup kind of hustle kind of culture, and what they want to do next, they don't want to do in the same way, right? And one of them, whilst on sabbatical, came up with the idea of their next startup, and he has just launched that and just funded it now. But he is absolutely running that startup in a completely different way, energetically and from a work-life balance perspective, because of the time that he put into redefining his relationship with work during the sabbatical. And so it's much more sustainable. He's having so much more fun with it. It's really great to see. And I literally have 2 other examples that, more or less are that flavor. So it's funny. So startup founders, yeah, they need a break. And then I think the other flavor is the kind of corporate professionals, right? And I think there. So let's take an example. I mean, I've worked with so many people. Well, let's take an example of somebody who is going to return to their same job, right? So the tie back to work can be a blessing and a curse, right? Particularly because it gives you the security, but it can feel a bit like locked in, right? And so I think a lot of the time people need to almost do the work on sabbatical, the real personal development work around what is actually wrong, and not wrong with my life and my work. And is it there's a fundamental issue with my passion and love for my career, or is it just that I've been in a toxic workplace, or that I've been working in an unhealthy way, right? And so a lot of the time I end up working with people where we kind of reframe, what they want out of a job, and then help them go and find that work, either within the context of a company, so they can go back and, redefine and their actual jobs, like their actual job role, or they end up, going and returning to the company that they're working for, but being really clear that this is a temporary situation, and I'm really going to look to get out of this work and get into something that suits me better from a work style perspective, from an environment perspective. But it doesn't necessarily fundamentally mean that they have to have this huge career pivot or shift all the time. The example of the person who really uses the sabbatical to make a pivot, but not necessarily in a total career pivot, but making the change to their working conditions or their working environment or their job role or that kind of thing. And it can be amazing how these tiny shifts can make a huge difference in how somebody's feeling about their life and the energy that they have for life and their purpose. So I think people tend to think that sabbaticals mean that you're going to leave your job or do these big life pivots after it. And actually, sometimes it's the smallest things that can make such a big difference. So I don't want people to think that just because you take a sabbatical means you have to come back and do something radically different when you return. Sometimes it's really just your relationship and your mindset around what you're doing that has to shift, and that can make a huge difference too.
Yeah, good point. And just on that point then, I mean, how would someone define whether it was, is a success or not at the end of, their sabbatical?
Yeah. So, and this is a really good question, because it actually goes back to intentionality and the purpose of your break. So I always work with people to make sure that they're crystal clear on the purpose of their break. So what do you actually really need from this time? Do you need to recharge? Do you need to refocus your career? Do you want to go and achieve a big dream, right? But then we break that down into what I call focus areas or themes, right? So there's a couple of different themes that kind of weave throughout a sabbatical. So there's quite often a health or wellbeing focus. So somebody's been working really hard and they just sort of want to get back on track with their health. But then there's often, this big desire for adventure or fun or, finding joy or, going and leaning back into habits or hobbies or interests that just light someone up. And they can be themes around creative endeavors. So like recording an album with your band or writing that book that you've always wanted to, or doing a painting artist's retreat, whatever it might be, right? So there can be sort of these themes around creativity or interests or self-expression. And then most often there's some sort of theme around, discovering what's next, and really kind of using your energy and time while you're on the break to reflect and get some perspective and really think about what's next, right? And design that. I know, Greg, that you're a huge fan of life design. So I take people through a life design process while they're on their break. And that's the most important thing, because when you're feeling rested and relaxed and calm and grounded in who you are, that is really the most powerful time to be thinking about your future and really visioning what's going to be next for you. And so, using the sabbatical to really define those things. And so, your question was, how do you know if that's been successful? And it's really about going back and looking at those themes and saying, well, have I restored my health and well-being? Yes. Have I really designed my next chapter? Yes. Have I gone and pursued some amazing, big life dreams or creative pursuits or fun and adventure? Yes. And then you can say, yeah, I really used this time for what I needed this time to be.
Yeah, nice. And I suppose even if you had a list of things that you wanted to do during your sabbatical and, you've ticked them off, we shouldn't beat ourselves up if there was a few things that we didn't do, because, it's getting back to that kind of, I had to make sure that all of my to-do list was all done, and we're giving ourselves pressure. When if you took a step back, having a sabbatical is quite
absolutely
a really good, privileged quite thing to do in the first place. So it's let's not beat ourselves up if we didn't do one or two things on the list.
Yeah, absolutely. Sense. And I think that's why it's better to not think about it in terms of a list of things that you're going to do, but more these themes, right? Because what it does is it gives you the flexibility to choose how you're going to invest your time and energy in that theme, in achieving that theme. And that gives you the flexibility to decide sort of in the moment what's right for you, what feels right, what you're excited about doing. And that might shift over time as you sort of do self-development and exploration work and you're really discovering kind of what's next. You can really allow yourself to lean into what's right for you in the moment, but also serendipity and opportunity and just having the flexibility to be able to, you meet some random person on a train and they invite you to have dinner and it becomes one of the most soul-fulfilling conversations you've ever had in your life. Those kinds of things are the things you want to have time to lean into. And I think that often the people that I work with are high achieving, hyper productive A types, right? Where, very, very scheduled, very goal orientated. And so it's really trying to almost use a sabbatical to teach them what it is like to live flexibly and live in the present moment and have enough time and space to just be. And so I really steer people away from having lists of things that they're going to achieve on sabbatical, because hyperproductivity and achievement is sort of the antithesis of what a sabbatical is about. And so we really need to lean away from, having goals and achievement focus when it comes to these breaks.
Yeah, and it's sometimes it's the unknown things that happen, like as you said, like the random chats with random people, or this opportunity comes up because you're not focused on work, something else pops up. So it's these kind of things that you don't see coming up can also be kind of beneficial as well. So good point.
I always use the analogy of a sabbatical being a beautiful masterpiece painting that you're creating, right? You need to have enough structure in terms of painting the outline of what it is that your masterpiece is going to be, to give you enough direction so that you know where you're going and you know what this masterpiece is going to become, right? But you need enough flexibility to be able to paint in the details on a daily basis and really be able to choose what color to use and to be inspired by something that happened and include that in your masterpiece. And, serendipitously, have a conversation that, leads you in a different direction for another piece of the masterpiece. So it's really about having enough structure to give you direction, but enough flexibility to be able to paint in the details on a daily basis.
Yeah, I love that. Beautifully said. Thanks, Lyndall. All right, so if someone's listened to this and they're like, "Oh, this sounds really awesome, Lyndall," like doing a sabbatical, how would you advise them on how to plan one? Like, what would you say in kind of like the basic steps of planning one?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think somebody really needs to think about a couple of key things when they're planning a sabbatical. We've talked a lot about the purpose of it, and I really think that it's very much about getting crystal clear on that purpose and then breaking it down into those themes. So what is it that I need to achieve? And then in each of those themes, you can have almost like a pick list of these are all the things that I could do. I don't have to do all of these things, but I can choose on a daily or weekly basis, what these things might look like, right? Then it's about looking at the time frame that you're thinking of and really thinking about, okay, are there what I call anchor activities? So these are the activities that can only be planned at a specific time or are going to take a specific chunk of time. So, for instance, you want to go to a particular music festival. That only happens once a year. And if you know that you really, really want to go to that, then you have to get that planned in as an anchor activity first, right? Then maybe you've got a particular place in the world that you want to visit, and there's a good time and a bad time to visit that country. Say, Australia, right? You don't want to visit the north of Australia in the height of summer because it's just too hot, right? So when is the good time to visit? So that's when you need to sort of anchor, those kind of plans. So I want to be in Australia, let's say, April to May, right? And so you get those anchor activities in, and then you're really just planning, okay, well, of all of these things, my big long list, how much money do I have and how much time can I take, right? And so that then becomes, you think of it almost like dials, right? So if you dial up the length of time, that is also going to dial up the amount of money that you need, right? And the activities are also a dial, right? And so if you dial down the amount of money that you have, you also need to dial down the level of activities that you are going to be able to do, right? So it's really just those three things that you need to balance: the activities, the time and the time frame, and the amount of money that you have to invest in this. And if you just play with those three dials, then you can come up with the right balanced plan for your situation.
Yeah, nice. I like the using that as an analogy. And then just on the sort of the money side, because obviously these can be quite costly depending on how long you do it for and what the activities you do, as you mentioned. How have people sort of funded these sabbaticals from your experience, and how has it worked for some of your clients, or maybe others that have taken it from what you've seen?
Yeah, absolutely. I think most of my clients, they've reached a certain point in their career where they've been pretty successful, and they have a store of money that they could dedicate to investments or to a down payment for a property or to a sabbatical, right? And so it's really just a decision on prioritization at that point. Then, and I guess, back to the beginning of the conversation, asking the question, what if you don't take this break, right? Is it super important for you to be putting this money into investments, or is it more important for you to be just going out there and living a big life for the life stage that you're in right now? And I think that then the people have got to make the right decision for them based on that. But for people in their early career, I think it becomes it's less about sort of stepping away from the big job kind of thing, because maybe you've only just started out in your career, and it's really about living your youth kind of thing. But then in terms of funding it, I've done it in all sorts of different ways, right? So I was, I guess, clever enough to buy an apartment when I was quite young and when interest rates were low. And I was able to rent out my apartment, and that funded the rent that I was able to get for my apartment was really funding my sabbatical, because I was choosing to go in my younger years. I was choosing to go to places that were really cheap to travel through. So South America, Southeast Asia, etc. And so I was able to take sabbaticals that had an absolutely net financial impact. The amount of money that I earned from renting out my apartment covered the cost of my sabbatical. So that was amazing. And then other sabbaticals I've absolutely done through we haven't really talked much about my career transition from corporate into entrepreneurship, but as soon as I started working for myself, I was doing big sort of project work or contract work, and so I was being paid very well, and I would only be working for 6-9 months on a particular project or contract, and then I would finish that, and then I'd be able to take a sabbatical, right? Because I'd earned the same amount that I would have earned in a year, I was earning in 9 months. And then I was able to, spread that earning out and take a sabbatical for the other 3 months. So that worked sort of mid-career. And now that I run Beyond a Break, it's very much a completely remote focused, independent business. So I'm able to take sabbaticals where I do what I call keep the lights on work, right? So it's just, I don't take client coaching sessions, but I just do what's required to kind of, keep the business ticking along, but the business kind of goes into maintenance mode while I'm on sabbatical. And then, I ramp it back up again when I get back from sabbatical. So that's how I sort of have funded it in different phases and stages of my life.
Nice. Yeah. And, if anyone's listening thinking, they'd love to do a sabbatical, but they're on the fence about spending X amount of money. I mean, just from my experience, my first sort of full 12 months one doesn't have to be that long, but it was definitely hands down one of the best decisions I've ever made to do it, because you're investing in obviously the experience while you're doing it, but the kind of benefits you gain from it and the insights and the learning, especially if you're like doing something like traveling and experiencing new places, meeting different people, it's like 10x, 20x sort of the investment you put down to, and as time goes on, we get older, time passes. It's, it's an amazing thing to to spend your hard-earned money on.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, it comes back to two things, really. Really, it comes back to, on your deathbed, are you going to say, I wish I spent more time in the office? And the answer is always no. And then the other thing is, what is it like? What is the purpose of work? We work so that we earn money so that we can live life, right? But people forget the living life bit. If you get so caught up in earning and working that you're not spending any time living your life, what are you doing? Like, why are you not out there living life and enjoying life and not just grinding your way through and surviving, right? That is not what life is for. Life is for living, not for working. And so we've got to make sure that the priority is focused in the right place.
Yeah. So while you were saying that, I've just been like nodding my head when you were saying that, because it's so true. I recently done an episode. There was a book, Die with Zero by Bill Perkins. Amazing book, by the way.
Oh gosh, that was you mentioned one of my other favorite books to recommend.
Well, we touched on it earlier about the hamster wheel thing, but I like his the thing that he said was, sometimes we're always on the hamster wheel, running and running and running, but never sort of stopping and getting the reward, which is the cheese, never stopping. We just keep working, gaining money, saving, working, but you never jump off the hamster wheel to kind of get the reward. You forget the reward.
Yeah.
So totally agree with that one.
It actually reminds me of, there's actually a sort of a problem at the moment with baby boomer generation of what they're calling over accumulation. I think this might be from the Die with Zero book as well, where they've spent their entire life accumulating wealth and saving and saving and saving for their retirement, right? And now they're in retirement and they literally don't know how to spend it. And they are not spending it. And so they've just got all of this accumulated wealth, and they keep on just living frugally, even though they've got, like millions and millions in retirement. They just keep on living like they've got to save every penny, and they're not enjoying the hard-earned money that they've earned, right? And so it comes back to, what did you earn and save this money for? And ultimately, you earn and save money to spend it. And that's the bit that people struggle with.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I heard that one. Yeah, they just get accustomed to, as you said, just keeping it and not using it. And I think also if someone
Yeah.
is on the sort of opposite end of the spectrum and kind of, let's say someone's a graduate or someone's sort of, as you mentioned, early in their career, if they can't go on a sabbatical in that sort of period, then it's okay to kind of, save up for one, over, it might take a few months,
Yeah.
not months, or even sort of a year or so, but that's absolutely fine. You can still, work your way up, save on the side to get that sabbatical that you really wanted. So yeah, there's ways to do it,
Yeah,
basically, in short,
absolutely.
isn't it?
There's absolutely, and particularly early in your career, you've got to put that as a focus. You've got to put it, give yourself a 2-year, 3-year target and say, okay, in 2 or 3 years, I want to leave my job, because in the early part of your career, you don't spend more than a couple of years in a job. You shouldn't, right? You should be sort of learning and exploring. So between your next job moves, anticipating that there's going to be one, save so that you can take a break of a few months before you start your next move, right? The between job time frame is a fantastic time to take a sabbatical, and you can do that in a really strategic way where you get the next job, like you actually get recruited for the next job, but then negotiate a break of 3 to 6 months before you start, right? That's all these things are possible. And that's how I've done a couple of my sabbaticals in my early career. And I think that you absolutely have to save to do that. But you also need to look at, how can I do this on the cheap? Like the Nordic countries are notoriously expensive to travel through, right? Australia's expensive to travel through. So don't go to those countries. If you want to do a traveling sabbatical, go to the cheaper areas, go to India, go to Southeast Asia, go to South America, right? And if you don't want to do a traveling sabbatical, that's also perfectly fine. Do a stay-at-home sabbatical. See if you can use like house sitting. There's lots of websites for house sitting where you can get accommodation for free in different locations by just looking after people's pets. Or there's like, work that you can do where you go and work on an organic farm somewhere in a different location, right? So there's lots of different options early in people's careers that can help you fund or make at least the cost of a sabbatical as neutral as possible.
Yeah. I like those ones. I've done something similar, the house sitting thing. I've done a stint of that, and I also done, what was the other one? This thing, Workaway. I did in Malaysia.
Exactly.
I've done a Workaway where you do a bit of work and they give you accommodation, and we didn't have to pay for accommodation, so that was quite fun. But yeah, absolutely, I agree with that.
Yeah,
totally, Lyndall. Just to kind of get a balanced argument here about sabbaticals, we talked a lot about the benefits. Would you say there are any downsides of sabbaticals, or any scenarios or stories where things didn't quite work out?
Yeah, I don't really have any examples of where a sabbatical hasn't worked out. I think it's more, I don't think I've ever seen an example of where a sabbatical has been like a negative, like a, just really a bad thing for somebody to have done. Everybody gets some sort of benefit. I think what might sometimes be challenging for people is that they get into a sabbatical and then it feels very different, or what they actually end up getting out of it is completely different to what they thought they were going to get out of it, right? So I think there's definitely the example of where perceptions kind of change. And one classic example would be somebody goes into it thinking, I want to achieve all of these big life dreams and tick off my bucket list, and really go and do all these things. But then halfway in, they almost have a burnout from their sabbatical, because they're just going too hard on their sabbatical, just like they do go too hard in life, right? And so that's where mid-sabbatical, they end up having a complete reset and realizing that actually what they need to do is just slow down. and just learn how to be present and learn how to live at a slower pace. And so, from the start of their sabbatical, they thought it was going to be this, big, action-filled adventure. But what they learned through the process of the sabbatical is actually how to slow down and how to kind of reset from a well-being perspective. So I think the learning and the perspective that someone gets throughout the course of a sabbatical can sometimes change. But honestly, that's most of the time it's because somebody hasn't really understood what it is that they really, really need at the beginning. And, we're really, really good at kind of kidding ourselves when it comes to these things a lot of the time. And so it's perfectly okay. We need to learn these lessons sometimes. But that's the biggest challenge, I think, is that you think the sabbatical is going to be like something, and then it sort of turns out to be something different. And the challenge is navigating through that, and that can feel very scary for people. But ultimately, I mean, those lessons are the real lessons that you need in life. And sometimes lessons are hard learned. So that can be the challenge.
Yeah, that's true. And that's also why a good reason is to, hire someone like you, Lyndall. Hire you as a coach and consultant throughout their journey.
Absolutely. I mean, that's, it's more than a couple of times why people have come to me, because they're mid-sabbatical and they're like, oh my gosh, I feel completely lost. I've got no idea what I'm doing. And they just need someone to think alongside them, and to really give them the chance to explore what's happening and explore what it is that they really need, and give themselves permission to slow down sometimes as well. So that's why it's incredibly important to work with a coach. And I think a lot of the time people think, sabbatical coach is going to help me plan a sabbatical. And, that's true. I do help people plan a sabbatical. Certainly, I'm not a travel agent. It's not about travel planning, but more from that purpose perspective and what do you need out of the time and structuring it. But the biggest chunk of work that I do with people is really just life coaching and career coaching, but in the context of the sabbatical journey that they're on. And that is the biggest benefit, I think, to their sabbatical, is that they've been able to work with a coach to really dive into answering these big questions for themselves while they're actually on sabbatical and have the energy to dedicate to doing that.
Yeah. All right. So I just got one more question before we jump into the sort of rapid fire round and what your plans are going forward. So last question. So for people who've kind of come into the end of their sabbatical, could you speak to those people who are kind of coming to the end? Any kind of tips, advice, comments you'd like to give to those people who are come to the tail end and go into whatever their plans are going forward? Anything you could say to those people?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the most important thing towards the end of the sabbatical is to, first of all, reflect on everything that you've learned in the journey so far. What are the insights? What are the epiphanies that have really come to you, and really capture those, but then use those to inform and go through a process of life design and think about the life that you want to actually build for yourself post sabbatical, and look at what that ideal looks like, and then craft a pathway to get there. And I think that the most important thing is to really design your life first, and then craft the work that fits around that life or fits in with that life. Because I fundamentally believe that we've been taught as kids to do it all wrong, which is, we're asked, what do you want to be when you grow up? Or what do you want to do when you grow up? And we really need to turn that around and say, okay, what kind of life do you want to live?
Yeah, I totally agree with that one. Yeah, I like that. Nice one, Lyndall. All right, we're going to quickly head over to the quick fire round, if that's all right, Lyndall. I've got 5 questions. I don't know if you want to grab a water or something
go for it
first. I'll go through the 5 questions, just keep them short, and I'll start off with the first one. So question number 1, what is your definition of freedom?
Being able to choose how I spend my time.
Nice. Okay, question number 2. What are 1 or 2 daily habits that have helped you in your life?
I don't like daily habits. I think of habits more across the course of a week. And that is the time frame that helps me the most. And so within the course of a week, I know that I need to have looked after my body. And so I've got lots of different body habits that I need to do. So I run, I do yoga, eating well. And then I've got habits that are focused around my mind. So what am I learning and who am I exposing myself to in terms of ideas? And then soulful habits. So what fills me up with joy, and making sure that I've got joyful things in the course of a week as well. I find body, mind, and soul habits over the course of a week is the best way for me to frame it and be able to make progress.
Oh, I love that. I love the soulful one. All right. Question number 3. What's your most important lesson in life?
Live the experiences to the full of the life phase that you're in. So don't try and delay living everything that your 20s has to offer until you're 40, because you're not going to want to live the kind of things that you could do in your 20s. You're not going to want to do them when you're 40. And that goes for every single life phase and stage.
Nice. Next question. What are 2 or 3 transformational book recommendations? Doesn't have to be a book, could be any kind of artistic media, but do you have any recommendations of things that have helped you in your life?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the best book I could say for getting perspective is 4,000 Weeks by Oliver Burkeman. I think that is just an absolutely wonderful setting for anybody who's thinking of taking a break and making sure that they're living their life to the full. And then, I guess back to the question on habits. So Atomic Habits by James Clear is just one of the most powerful books around change and building the life that you want through taking small, consistent, progressive steps in the forms of habits. And then absolutely, if you want a how-to guide on taking a career break or sabbaticals, then my business partner, Katrina McGee, wrote a fantastic book called Taking a Career Break for Dummies. And I was the technical editor for it. I think it's absolutely infused with all of our wisdom and frameworks and everything that we've learned in working with all of our clients over the years. So that's an absolutely fundamental guide for planning your break.
Nice one. And then the last question is, what's one piece of advice you can give someone just starting out thinking about sabbaticals?
I think the most powerful question, and we've covered this before, but the most powerful question you can ask yourself is, what happens if I don't take this break? Just don't think too much about all the practicalities of taking it. Just think about, what does the trajectory of my life look like if I don't do this? And that is really the best place to start.
Good stuff. All right, Lyndall, thank you very much for answering the quick fire round. Really good answers there.
No problem.
So so just on to the last bit about what you're doing, in your business at Beyond the Break? Anything you want to just talk about? Anything you want to share? What's next kind of thing? Would you like to tell us more about that?
One of the most exciting things that I've been working on is we've just launched a career break and sabbatical community. So this is for career breakers and sabbatical takers. And it's all about bringing people together with other people that are on the same journey, to learn from each other, but also to be have access to, we've got on this wonderful community platform, we've got courses around how to plan a break. I've just done a course around life design that we've got in there. We've got a whole resource library of everything that you need, all of the tools and inspiration that you need for planning and making the most of a break. We have drop-in coaching sessions that people can come so that they can have their questions answered, or they can change their mindset and get unstuck. And we've got these wonderful community calls too, so you can connect with all of the other people who are on a career break or sabbatical and support and learn from each other. I think the most important thing that somebody can do sometimes is just be connected with other people that are feeling and doing the same kind of things, and learn from each other, and just not feel alone in the journey. So if you are thinking of taking a career break or a sabbatical, jump on over to breakspacecrew.com and join the waitlist, because we're going to be opening up the community for another cohort in November. And we would welcome you with open arms at whatever stage of your break you're at, planning, whether you're on your break, whether you're returning from a break. Come and join us. It's so much better to do the journey with other people as your cheerleaders alongside you.
Nice. Thanks, Lyndall. Can you just repeat the website again?
Yeah. So the community is breakspacecrew.com. So no spaces, just break as in breakspacecrew.com. And you can join the waitlist there. And then if you want to find out more about me, you can go to my website. So that's beyondabreak.com. And that's where I've got all of the information about working with me, either from a corporate perspective, because I support organizations who are launching and optimizing sabbatical programs for their employees. But I also work with private coaching clients too. So if you want more information about that, you can go to beyondabreak.com. The other thing I would say is, even if you don't want any one of those and you just think that whatever I said today was interesting, I hope that is the case, then please just connect with me on LinkedIn. I love to build the community on LinkedIn and connect with all sorts of different people. So just find me. My name is Lyndall Farley, LYNDALLFARLEY. Find me on LinkedIn and connect with me there. I'd love you to say hi.
Perfect. Thanks, Lyndall. And I'll make sure all of those are in the show notes.
Great.
So, Lyndall, thank you very much for dropping by. We talked about one of my absolute favorite subjects in the whole world, which is sabbaticals, and just lit me up the whole the whole session, because it's my favorite thing to talk about. Yeah, and there were so many other things I wanted to ask you about as well, but maybe for another time.
Maybe another time. It was so great to speak with you, and I always love talking to people who are on sabbaticals or who have experienced the journey, because it's always so great to hear it from your perspective as well.
Thank you for spending your time with us today. If you need more help, you can check out our free guides and services on our website, freedombeforephi.com. If you have a burning question or just want to chat, don't hesitate to drop me an email at greg@freedombeforephi.com. If you found the show useful and want to be notified of future episodes, you can click follow on Spotify, Apple, or the app you're currently using right now. If you think the episode will help a friend or a colleague, feel free to share it with them. And lastly, if you learned just one good thing that will help you in your journey and you want to help us out, please do leave a 5-star rating on your podcast player app. That would help us out loads. All right, so that was our interview with Lyndall. I hope that's helped you if you're thinking about planning a sabbatical one day. And if you do have any questions, feel free to just reach out to myself or to Lyndall. All right, so have an awesome day. And as always, practice gratitude, live life by your design, and do things that make you smile. You got this.